Welcome into a very exciting episode of The Scene. I'm your host, Bubba Startz, and with me today is Jay Bell from Jay Bell and the Lazy Susan Band. Welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Well, it's a pleasure. I know we have mutual friends. We've been chatting for a little bit off camera, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and the band, and then we'll get into it.
Sure. Well, my name's Jay Bell, and I front Jay Bell and the Lazy Susan Band. We've been spinning around the Twin Cities since 2001, so we're coming up on a 25th anniversary. But it's taken a bunch of different shapes, and there was a pretty big break in the middle there, so I don't know if we can really call it 25 years.
It's been around. I will give you the quarter century mark, sir. And I love a good pun. So thank you for the spin around the Twin Cities. You were recently featured on the Northstar Original Review show over at Bigwood Brewery. We were talking about, obviously, Corey and AJ are big proponents of what we're doing, and vice versa. You're the first one we've had on that has done the show, so just being off of it recently, why don't you give us a little a review of the review?
Oh, okay, cool. It was great. There's supposed to be five acts, and one of them couldn't make it. So it ended up being four acts. All the acts were great. Like you do showcases sometimes, and it's like these acts are kind of at different levels, or this one's not really my cup of tea. But all four acts were really great, and Corey and AJ are fantastic. And the Bigwood Brewery is so cool. They've been around for a long time, but they've only been in this spot for a year, and it's such a hip spot. There's lots of stained glass, and it's a real like chill atmosphere. And then they've got a big outdoor stage too. So I was a little jealous being there in February and looking out the window at the outdoor stage because I want to play there this summer.
Well, we were actually working with Jamie to try and make that happen for not just my band Starts and Ends before the Scene Projects, and maybe we can get you on a review up there with the Scene Projects and a songwriter showcase.
Oh yeah.
We continue to grow up in that area. But why don't obviously 25 years is a long time to go back, and you said there was a big break. I'm assuming COVID was another break if you weren't going again there. So why don't we kind of pick it up from there, and you can give us a little bit of the backstory of the last 5 years or so of the band.
Yeah, COVID wasn't the break I was referring to, but that was tough. We've been a gigging band since we started, where that's what we do. And I've been gigging since I was in junior high, and so like not being able to was really hard. We did 64 weeks in a row of live streams from this room, and we watched the numbers, and like two of the guys in the band and we were each other's bubbles. Our families were the bubbles, and even when the numbers would go up even worse, I'd do it by myself, or my daughter would come down here and do it with me, and so that was the only way to stay sane, was like connecting to handfuls of people through that every week. But yeah, we definitely missed playing out.
And now coming back, is the band picking up where you've left off in the past, or was it kind of a having to rebuild from the ground up as everything was just brand new again? It seems like up there. South Dakota had a much different experience, Jay, where we didn't really shut down anything, and there was a few months of no concerts, but we jumped back in pretty quickly, and whether it was good or bad, I guess we'll never know, but. Why don't you, kind of tell us about what you've been up to lately?
It was weird. There was an adjustment coming out of COVID for us because we overcompensated, like because we weren't used to playing. We had a bunch of like contracted shows that just kept getting postponed under COVID. And then when everything opened back up, we had all those shows to make up. And then everybody started booking like that. And we were thirsty for shows, and we overbooked. And so the year after COVID, when the world opened back up, we overplayed and really burnt ourselves out a lot. We had to have like a come to Jesus meeting of like, all right, we can't do this anymore. So we had to find a way to settle into a groove. And I think in the last 2 years we've done that. We found a nice little groove for, we perform as a full 5-piece rock band, and then we also perform as an acoustic trio. A real big piece for us is 3-part harmony. Almost everything has big 3-part harmony, and so the guys that sing the 3-part are the trio.
That's awesome. I love harmony, right? I'm not of the generation of hippies, but I was kind of raised by hippies. And even my parents are too late to have made that, but grew up with bands like the Grateful Dead and Crosby, Stills and Nash, and all of that music, that old folky kind of music from the 60s, right, was all about harmony, and the way that voices come together and blend. It just makes music so much more. And now that we're in this era, you don't really have it. We're in the era of the pop star. We have been for, 30 years now, it seems like. And you don't have a lot of groups that are doing that. It's very singularly focused on one voice. And I believe that there's power in those harmonies and power in the band, and not just the pop star, kind of take on the music business.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I feel like, and a lot of people are singing with like harmonizer pedals now. And even if people don't know what three-part harmony is or aren't very musically inclined, when they hear it live, they know something special is happening. And so I feel like I joke that our band gets away with a lot because we have these harmonies, and it distracts people from the fact that they might not know our songs. And so they get kind of brought in. We also have a couple of horn players. So we say we have a part-time horn section. And so live horns and constant three-part harmony isn't something you see a lot. So I feel like we get to cheat a little bit by getting people to eat their broccoli by listening to more original songs.
No doubt. And I myself, I mentioned my band before. I usually play as a trio, and it's just me. I'm singing all night. We're playing 4-hour bar shows, and just being that one voice out in the front, while it is efficient because I'm not worried about, relying on someone else to have to do, their singing parts and things. It doesn't have the power. I think there's something incredible about when, because we all want to be lead singers. I think for the most part, people who sing are used to being out in the front of that. There is a power in the pulling back and saying, no, I'm going to support this other voice, and that kind of giveaway to the song that is so powerful. And I think a lot of musicians, I think a lot of singers forget about that. And I love that you guys are just really digging into that. I mean, obviously, it's been part of the band probably for, a couple of decades. So it's not like it's going anywhere. It's a big part of who you are. But I think it's great. I hope that comes back in this, this next generation of art that is emerging right now.
Yeah, for sure. I really like I mentioned people using harmonizer pedals before. I'm an old school organic guy. I want to hear wood and metal vibrating like I don't dig the playing to the backing tracks. I don't like the drum buddy that everybody's playing with isn't really my thing. Although having said that, like some of the loopers out there are really good. The guys that like build the loops like naturally, it's so
And
cool.
that's different, right? I would
Yeah.
say that that's a little bit different because you're building it still in an organic way.
Yeah.
It's much different. While the sound and the look of it can be similar to like a backing track to a layperson listener, what's actually going on is pretty insane when
Yeah.
they're doing bass tracks, they're doing drums, and it's one guy on stage with an acoustic guitar, a guy you may be familiar with, L Dub.
Oh yeah.
He just one of the best out there. Obviously, guys like Keller Williams been doing it forever and building that. But I think it's incredible, and the amount of talent that it takes. Like I can play guitar, I can sing, I can play bass, I can do all those things. But to do them and then be able to control it on a machine that's this big, and to have it all going and working at the same time, and to sound good.
Yeah, and to be entertaining while you're building it. Like it's like you got to be able to hit those the first time through because nobody wants to watch you like retake a take live. I was in Key West a few years ago, and there was this guy who was so good, and it took him so long to build up a song, but it was so interesting. He told me he only does 4 songs a set because it takes that long to get it all built up. I followed him to 3 gigs that day because I just wanted to watch him do that. So yeah, you're right. There's something super unique about that.
Yeah, and it's just something that I don't have. Maybe it's because I'm a little technologically inept in some areas. I
Yeah.
learned how to use Zoom, and I was like, no, this is good enough. In the podcasting world, everybody's, oh, well, you got to use Riverside and you got to do all these other ones. And I'm like, no, I'm going to stick with what I know has worked for me, and I know it. I don't want to learn something else. And maybe I'm a little old school in that fashion. I feel I'm 38. I'll be 39 in May. And I feel like we're kind of that tweener generation. I was born in an analog world, completely analog world. And I remember growing up first artists that I was really into were the bands of the 90s, man. Red Hot Chili Peppers, Pearl
Yeah.
Jam, Alice in Chains, like all that grunge stuff. And then what evolved in that. And then by the time I'm in high school, it's dominated by the pop stars. It's the Britney Spears and the NSYNC. And, obviously I love the hip hop community and how it has come and brought it into, and the electronic side of that, right? The producers really made a stance. But now I feel like we're all trying to integrate all of that, because even the producers that are great at that, there's only so far you can go down that path, and then it just keeps kind of repeating on itself. And
Yeah.
hence why you have the music that you have today, and why it's especially mainstream stuff is so boring, because they're just kind of rinsing and repeating what has worked before, and it's so easy to copy and paste everything, right? That I think people are ready for raw and real music again. Like you said, wood and metal vibrating together. That form of expression is starting to resonate again.
Yeah. There's your pun again. Well done.
I love them. The name of my band is Starts and Ends.
Clever. I like it.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Hey,
So,
you were talking about like the 90s music. I grew up in Winona, Minnesota, and I actually went to college in Winona, Minnesota too. And I remember very distinctly listening to the Winona State College radio station and hearing at like midnight on a Monday a song that was it just drove me. I couldn't understand what it was, like a cowboy punk song. It was just, and they were screaming and it was terrible. And then the next day I couldn't get it out of my head, and I went down to the record store in Winona, and I learned that it was Soul Asylum, and they were from Minnesota. They were from Minneapolis. And so I bought that record and I listened to it over and over again, and I went from not understanding it to hating it to kind of digging it to absolutely loving it, and then wanting to know everything about what was happening in the Twin Cities. And I knew I had to move up here as soon as I could, and the Replacements were still going. The Jayhawks were taking off. That's when I learned that Prince was from here, and so from a pretty young age, I knew I wanted to get up to the Twin Cities scene.
the fact that you learned later in life, being from Minnesota, that Prince was from Minnesota, makes me feel a lot less bad about not knowing Soul Asylum was from Minnesota.
Well, I was pretty young at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. We're not so young now, though, are we? It's weird for me because I'm kind of coming into this age, and something you hit on there, the local college radio station and just local radio in general, not being what it was 35 years ago. I mean, that's why I have the podcast that I do, and I'm building this platform to support local independent artists like yourself, because we don't have that outlet anymore that's out there. And while I was, while we're disappointed in that, it also left a huge opening for someone like me to come in and go, well, I'm going to do this then. I already love all of these musicians. I love connecting. My network of musicians was already huge. That's why the show kind of took off, is because I already had 1,000 numbers of other musicians just from being in the industry. So once I was like, oh, you're a podcaster now, I just started hitting everybody with a text. Hey, you want to talk to me? And then once that gets out there, then everybody starts texting you. And that's the beauty of where we're at right now in the history of the podcast. We're not even a full year in, Jay. And look at what we've done. We were nominated for Content Creator of the Year by our Midwest Country Music Organization, also founded in the Minneapolis area, but now it's spread from the Great Lakes to the Rocky Mountains. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's community. And I hope that, in the future, you're a member of all of the communities. Obviously, you're with the Northstar guys. Now you're part of the scene as well. And we're just going to keep on growing.
That's super exciting. And it's where people go. I mean, in this age, it's hard to figure out where to go to find new music. Like the story that I told, I had a local record store, and I could go in and say, I heard this terrible song at midnight on KQAL, and it kind of sounded like this. And the guy behind the corner said, yep, that was Passing Sad Daydream by Soul Asylum. They close the show with it every night. It's on this record. And I could also say, well, why do I like this? What is it? Why do I like this? Oh, you're probably biting onto like, there's some country influence in a hard rock band. Like, you should also listen to this band. And like, that's how I discover music. And that doesn't happen anymore. There really aren't record shops to go talk to people like that. So things like this, like your podcast, are where people find new music.
Exactly. And then come to meet the artist behind the music. And then they're connecting with the live events. I mean, the way I've explained, the podcast and my larger vision for it to people is that we not only want to be Rolling Stone and your local radio show, but we want to be MTV, VH1. We want to be Bonnaroo or Lollapalooza. We want to be all of those things were, and not necessarily that we need it to be at that scale. It's the vibe and the feeling and the community of that we're trying to bring back, because losing a lot of those things, I feel like, is what has kind of brought us to how society is now anyway. We all became so disconnected from each other that we forgot all the similarities that we have. We forgot that country folk, also like hard rock, and hard rock folk like country too. And I don't think that any place kind of exemplifies that quite as well as the Midwest, and especially Minnesota. It's really nice that it's opened back up, because that Minneapolis scene for us down here in South Dakota, I'm on the east side of the state. I'm still 90 minutes southwest of Sioux Falls. But for us, we look to the cities as kind of our vibe check. That's where we keep our pulse on, or our finger on the pulse rather, of the kind of national scene. That's where we're going to see the big names that are playing the stadiums, that can't come down. Luke Bryan's not playing the 8,000 seat, Denny Sanford. He's playing, and Zach Bryan, who a mutual friend, Sundown 47, those guys got to open for him up there. Like, they're not coming to play in South Dakota unless it's maybe the state fair, or they're playing the Buffalo Chip during the Sturgis motorcycle rally. So there's always been a connection between the South Dakota scene and the Minneapolis scene. And when we kind of it was like 3 years that you guys, it was a long time. It wasn't just like, 2020 and then no, it's been a long process. And in some ways it feels like Minneapolis is just now waking up within the last 12 months to everyone being comfortable getting out again. So I'm very grateful that, not only have we survived, but we're beginning to thrive again. And it's the independent sources that are really feeding this fire, whether it be, the Scene Projects or the Northstar Original Revue. I know Andy Ellis is doing some writing up there and has his own podcast, and all these people are just feeding into this, and we're building something absolutely incredible.
That's so fantastic. It's it's needed. There's energy for it. The goal of connecting people better is all that we need.
Well, speaking of connecting, how can we connect with Jay Bell and the Lazy Susan Band? Go ahead and plug everything and let us know about any shows you got coming up here as we move into the summer.
Yeah, well, we are, you can get all of our stuff at jbellmusic.com, and then we're also on all the social media sites. You can buy our music digitally wherever you buy music. You can see our videos on YouTube, but all that stuff is linked at the website, jbellmusic.com. Everyone's traveling in March, and so we're taking March off, and then we had a big February, and we're heading back at it in April. We play at River Siren Brewing in downtown Stillwater right away in April, which is a favorite show of ours. We've got some really cool stuff coming up this summer. My favorite band of all time is Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers. We've been on tour with them a couple of times. They took us to Mexico once, and they're back in Minnesota this summer, so we're playing some shows with them that should be really exciting. We're looking forward to this Green Room show with Northstar Original Revue at the end of April. So just a lot of big stuff. And the trio is going to go on a little tour this fall where we're going to hit, 6 or 7 spots.
Fantastic. Well, Jay, thanks for being on the show with me today, and thanks for being part of the scene.
Well, thanks for having me. This was super cool. I can't wait to check out all the other episodes.